ready crew.
We're a rough and ready crew.
Sound off.
1, 2.
Sound off.
3, 4.
Sound off.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm Key Evans. I'm the acting chair of the Democrats Abroad Veterans and Military Families Caucus. Today, we are going to be discussing a very important topic. It affects thousands of U.S. veterans living abroad and affects their ability to go to school abroad. So we're going to be hearing from Christian Pierce and Michael Ramos today, and I shall turn this over to Michael now.
Thanks, Key. And for our listeners out there, Key does a great job as the acting chair of our global caucus. So as Key said, my name is Michael Ramos. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I'm in Australia, and I am on the steering committee of the Global Veterans and Military Families Caucus. So as Key mentioned, we're going to be talking to a gentleman in Switzerland. His name is Christian Pierce. We had a very good conversation. I should clarify, this is not live. We had already spoken to him, and we're going to play that clip in just a second. And he had some really interesting things to say about the GI Bill. Just to be clear, for those who aren't necessarily familiar with the way the Department of Veterans Affairs works or how the GI Bill works, what's supposed to happen is that the veteran of the U.S. military or the currently serving service member, they commit to enlisting, or they're an officer, they serve time, and after you meet a certain criteria, you're eligible for VA benefits. One of those benefits through the Veterans Benefits Administration is the GI Bill, meaning educational benefits. So the US government, I should say the American taxpayers, will pay your college tuition should you decide to further your education. In this case, Christian is pursuing his PhD after already having completed his master's in Brazil under the GI Bill. And then he chose to go to Switzerland because other veterans have already done it to, earn their PhDs and masters at various schools in Europe. And he wanted to follow that path. However, starting around the Trump administration, things changed. And Christian's going to talk about that. So everybody relax. You're going to be surprised. And hopefully you hit us up with any questions you hear stemming from this conversation. Hi, Christian. How you doing?
Great. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate your time today. I'd be doing a lot better if I had my GI Bill benefits, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, I feel you there. You're not the only person that we've heard from who's having this issue, this problem. It's a lingering problem for tons, as you know, for not just people in Europe, not just people who served in the Army, but, veterans, military family members all over the entire world are having this problem. If you could elaborate on your situation so our listeners can have a better understanding of what's happening. I hear about this GI Bill issue, student veterans living abroad. What's all this about? So perhaps you can break it down for us.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you for listening to my story. And I would ask that if you are hearing my words at this moment, that you are willing to act on not just my behalf, but as Michael said, the veterans around the world who are facing this issue. And, if that means really putting pressure on now your senator to pass HR 7375, or just really start supporting veterans, not just within the US who you see on a daily basis or saying thank you for your service, but really those of us in the community in general who may not be in the US, who have really chosen to go abroad, not even because they don't want to be in the US, but because in fact, they do love the US. And that's kind of my story. So I'm originally from West Orange, New Jersey, which is District 11. Currently, my congresswoman is Mikey Sherrill, and her office has been very supportive of my efforts to get what should be benefits that I should already have, that I'm already entitled to. But it's been at this point a year and a half. So the reason I am entitled to these benefits goes back to my military service. I attended the United States Military Academy at West Point and graduated in 2010 with a bachelor's in economics. And then from there, I served 5.5 years on active duty, which included 2 deployments. And what's important to note is that extra time. So as a West Pointer, my obligatory service was 5 years, but I stayed that extra half year, one, because my deployment was extended, but 2, because that extra time allowed me as a West Pointer to qualify for the GI Bill. And I think at the time I was able to receive 50%. Now it's been bumped up, I believe, to 60% of the GI Bill percentage. Now, if you're listening and you aren't necessarily familiar with the GI Bill benefits, what that does is allow a service member to receive money, so tuition, book stipends, and housing allowance and benefits for their education. So an enlisted soldier serves, 36 months on active duty, qualifies for 100% of that. What's amazing about the GI Bill is that most US public institutions recognize it, but then foreign institutions do as well. So when I got off of active duty, I was also a reservist, and then I worked in New York for a bit prior to deciding to look abroad for my graduate education. And the reason I decided to look abroad was actually because of the military, because of my experience being immersed with other cultures and the perspective that added to my life as an American. I was able to take lessons learned and then apply it to my friends, my family, my professional and personal settings back in the US. So I felt like travel was extremely enriching. It was immersive, and it was a phenomenal educational experience. So I had the opportunity in 2016 to be accepted to the Caucus Graduate School of Business in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. So it's at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, which is the top federal school in Brazil. While I was there, I helped the administration set up the foreign approval program through the Department of Veteran Affairs. So what this program did is allow me as a US veteran to receive, it's called the post 9/11 GI Bill, but receive my post 9/11 Chapter 33 educational benefits at Caucus. So I was there, successfully graduated, and was able to receive my housing allowance, which was phenomenal. It really helped me because I was a grad student in a foreign country, really had no income. And so that allowed me to survive and thrive. And, I was the co-class president there. I was able to volunteer, helping people teach or learn English. I was teaching English. I was helping with diversity and inclusion initiatives to make Brazil more inclusive. So here's a US veteran who goes and has an impact positively as a civilian in a foreign country. And one of the reasons I was able to do so was actually because of the GI Bill. So after graduating, I moved back to the US for a bit, and then I pivoted to Europe and looking at, once again, to go abroad for a PhD. So one of the schools that I looked at and that I am now attending is the University of St. Gallen in St. Gallen, Switzerland. It is one of the top business schools in Europe. And actually, it was already a approved university by the Department of Veteran Affairs. The reason being because another West Pointer in 2012 had actually done his master's degree there. And so he had gone through the same approval process that I had while I was at the Caucus Graduate School of Business. And so in seeing that here's an institution in Europe that already has a school certifying number, school certifying official, and veterans already attending, I felt very comfortable in applying, and I was accepted and am now doing my PhD in organization studies and cultural theory. So I entered the University of St. Gallen in February of 2021. Prior to that, in January, I had already started the communication with the school certifying official to go through the process just to receive my GI Bill benefits, since the other veteran was also doing his PhD at the same time. And so I didn't foresee any type of barrier or issue because I just wanted to do my PhD. And, Switzerland's much more expensive than Brazil. And so the GI Bill was something that I was really relying on as a PhD student and researcher at St. Gallen in order to be able to have a better standard of living, not a high standard of living, but just, enough where I'm not having to go into debt or really worry about my bills month to month. So in February, I start, and we still haven't really heard back from the VA. And then the first communication I receive is that I was denied my benefits because the VA didn't see the University of St. Gallen as an institution of higher learning. And in that letter, I just shook my head because obviously, one, it's on the Financial Times list for over a decade running for their master's in strategy and international management. And it's already in a approved school from the VA. So I'm absolutely confused and flabbergasted by this response. So I messaged the VA, and they were really hesitant to provide any real clarification. So they then just end up denying me flat out and say, well, I'm not able to receive my benefits because my PhD program, which is Organization Studies and Cultural Theory, is different from the program that's actually approved, which is a PhD in International Affairs. So they both of these programs fall under the same PhD office at the same institution, which has already been approved by the VA. So my school certifying official and I say, okay, we look on the VA website, which still says, fill out the VA form 22-0976. We do that, and this is probably April 2021. And it takes a while, and the VA gets back to us. And to my school certifying official says, well, in addition to the VA 22-0976, you need to fill out all these requirements, which is a laundry list of things that is not even listed on the website, nor on any public VA resource. And it includes things like, are the teachers in good standing with the city? Is the city fire codes adhered to by the institution? And what is the curriculum? We need the whole curriculum translated to English. We need to know the non-VA students or non-veteran students to know that, they aren't getting a cheaper rate. Like all these things that actually, when you look at a European institution, a federal European institution, no less, would be illegal to provide to a government entity like the VA. And at this point, I want to point out as well the fact that none of this was asked for when I did the process in Rio de Janeiro. It was a very streamlined, clean-cut process, and I was able to receive my benefits. But now there's this obstacle of these 48 items. But then let's say the school had actually been able to legally provide those. The other issue came up, which was that the VA requested an electronic transfer of funds. And in order to do so, wanted foreign institutions to have either employee ID number from the IRS and or a US-based bank account. And so if you didn't have one of those, you had to go through a third party. Like they specifically mentioned Western Union. Well, most foreign institutions, let alone like one in Switzerland that is very proud of its banking secrecy or banking laws, is going to just send money to an institution like Western Union in hopes that it gets to the US government or vice versa, that the US government goes through Western Union and then that money gets to the school for tuition. So these were two huge issues. The lack of transparency from the VA Form 22-0976, and then the electronic transfer of funds. So thankfully, with veterans such as yourself, Michael, and then the assistance of my congressional office, we were able to get some traction. And that's where we see 7375 come in. And hopefully the electronic fund transfer gets changed. Ultimately, we have now it's July 2022. Myself and other veterans haven't received our benefits. And, with HR 7375, we have an overwhelming, I should say, amount of support from the Student Veterans of America, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, Disabled American Veterans, Higher Ed Military, and then the American Ex-Servicemen's Association. The only institution opposing all this is the VA itself. And it would cost absolutely nothing for the VA to change its antiquated and outdated systems to allow just direct electronic transfer of funds to these foreign institutions, as well as it would cost nothing for the VA to be transparent in what they require and ultimately just change the VA Form 22-0976 in a way that makes it convenient for veterans who are abroad or outside the US who are going to legitimate foreign institutions to receive our benefits. Because now, it's like I said, it's been basically a year and a half, and I've had to pay out of pocket for things that I had budgeted for, or, other expenses have had to come up, like buying a new laptop. And I have had to pull or basically step into debt because I didn't have the little cushion that I had prepared for, planned for in budgeting and saving to do a PhD in Switzerland. So when you look at this hindrance, the VA is only hurting Americans who have already served this country and are already entitled to these benefits. And all we want to ultimately do is continue our service to others, similar to what we did in the military, by furthering our own education. I'm getting a PhD, not for myself, but to use the information and the contributions I can make to impart this knowledge and information to other people, most notably other Americans, to use my foreign experience when I go back to the US to expand others' perspectives in a way that creates a better society.
Yeah, that's a great point. You made several great points. And honestly, this situation is a disgrace that the VA is the only institution opposing this. I will say that, Democrats abroad, we reached out to Congress to say, hey, how much would this cost? Like the official number, not just a rough estimate from, an email or, just reading a New York Times article or something like that. What's the official cost of making this change so the VA could, update its system to allow for foreign schools to get electronic tuition payments, and as opposed to paper checks or going through Western Union or all these other, cockamamie options. And, they said the Congressional Budget Office gave us a document and it costs $0 of federal taxpayer money. So, it's pretty eye-opening that the VA would still oppose this. And then their next argument was something along the lines of, oh, well, if we update our electronic payment processing system, that would, quote, interfere with VA's efforts in, modernizing this new digital GI Bill initiative. Well, end quote. They've been saying that for, I believe, 3 years. So, what's the holdup? And it doesn't cost anything. I'm not understanding. I think that VA is just pitifully behind its own. VA does a lot of good work. Okay, I'm not here to just bash the Department of Veterans Affairs, but when it comes to student veterans like yourself and thousands of others living abroad who go to legitimate, qualified, high-ranking schools, universities all over the world. The University of St. Gallen isn't just a shack in the woods, in the middle of the sticks. This is a legitimate, top European institution And you know what the kicker is? As our colleague mentioned previously from a different call we had, is that most foreign universities are actually cheaper than US universities. So it is in the VA's best interest to, resolve this situation as soon as possible. Anyway, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Christian, was, do you personally know anyone? You answered this earlier by saying, the gentleman that you had talked to, that you had communicated with, who is also at your same school, is also having this problem. And I was going to say, do you personally know any other veteran? But you and I both know that within our networks, there are gazillions of them.
Well, I think one thing to point out is not only do we know multiple veterans abroad who are facing this, but there are multiple veterans abroad facing this who don't have the capacity to fight for themselves anymore. I mean, you think about what we've been through. I just 2 weeks, no, not even 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, was the 10th anniversary of one of my good friend's deaths. He had gotten blown up by an IED in Afghanistan. And, some of my friends were talking about that. We were reflecting. And there's so much that veterans have to deal with, given our military service and the friends we've lost, the casualties that we may have personally had or faced, that this shouldn't have to be another battle veterans have to fight. And so I can completely understand when people need to just step back and say, look, I can't handle it. I'm just going to, I'm going to take it as a loss. And I'm not going to worry about whether or not I can get my GI Bill benefits. Now, while I can understand that, that's why you and I are here today, because it's not just my benefits I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for thousands of veterans who are abroad, our family of veterans. And I empathize and I know, because I've had those sleepless nights. You talk about the stress or just the pain that we've gone through. It can get seemingly unbearable, but we fight for those who can't. That was one thing that I learned in the military. It's one thing I stick up for now. And
absolutely. Yep.
So, like I said, there are multiple veterans. If you're listening and you don't personally know a veteran, I'm sure there's a veteran that that knows somebody, or within their community, there's definitely somebody who is abroad and they are probably facing this. And so when we look at the impact that this has, the financial, the mental, the physical stress that it's taking out on veterans, I would ask you today, if you are listening, help us fight, support us. And the way you can best do that is contact your senators, support HR 7375, get them to pass that. Contact the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, like the SVAC, as the acronym is known as, and we use acronyms all the time in the military. Contact them, pressure them, but ultimately check in on veterans. Check in on the veterans abroad and see what kind of support they really need, what kind of support we really need. This is one huge thing, HR 7375, the electronic transfer of funds. But if we can't get the whole system changed as far as a VA form 22-0976 as well, then there will still be hindrances for veterans who are abroad just trying to get the benefits that they are entitled to study, to immerse themselves in other cultures and expand their minds to ultimately make the US and the world a better place.
Yeah, it's important. HR 7375. So a lot of people may be listening saying, what the heck does this bill do? So, I just want to urge folks, take the time, go to congress.gov and, type in HR 7375 in the search box and you can see it. And what this bill does is it says the VA must update its payment processing system within 90 days of being enacted into law. This isn't a monumental task, given all of the other veterans issues that are, toxic exposure, burn pits. We have all of these other veterans issues that are, demanding everyone's attention, honor flights coming to DC, the media is focused on all these different things. This is one more thing that's not really, it's not controversial, nobody besides the VA opposes this. So for everybody listening, as Christian said, please take a moment, contact both of your senators and say, hey, I'm your constituent from whatever state. I'd really appreciate it if you could please co-sponsor or support and pass the bill, HR 7375, which would resolve this issue for many veterans living abroad. In addition to that, as Christian said, the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, same thing, say, hey, this bill is pending in your guys' jurisdiction. Let's have a vote on it, please. This isn't something that, we're not just trying to rename a post office. This is serious business. We have veterans who are burning through their savings. And, this is something that needs to be urgently addressed. So, yeah, thank you so much, Christian. When these problems started in general, not just for you, but for veterans in general, is my understanding about anywhere from 2 to 2.5 years ago is when all this started. And, perhaps we can put a little background information along with this recording when we post it online, so folks can be a little familiar with, how and when these problems started. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier, sorry, I keep jumping around a lot. One of the things that we mentioned is that, this bill has the support of 2 of the big 6. When I say the big 6, I mean the VSOs, the Veteran Service Organizations, Disabled American Veterans and VFW. We're talking about millions of people. These are significant groups that have very much influence in veterans policy making. And they are saying, please pass this bill. Okay. So, again, with such a strong coalition, perhaps maybe we need Jon Stewart, just like he's been fighting for the burn pits issue. And that's about to be, that's moments away from being signed into law. So, anyway, thank you so much, Christian. We're going to see if we can get some people to make some phone calls and write some emails. So this should be, with everybody thinking about the 4th of July, not too long ago, we had Memorial Day and the D-Day remembrance, and all of this stuff is on the forefront of our minds. This is something that's very patriotic. This is advocacy. This is meaningful. This is something that, it only takes a moment of your time. And if you do get a response back from Senator so-and-so, please forward that to us so we know what they said. We want to make sure these folks are on record. And, we can approach them, we can thank them, or we can say, well, why don't you support it? So it's important that we follow up with everything. Okay, Christian, are there any final thoughts about this whole topic? Anything you'd like to share or anything else?
I'd just like to say, 1, thank you very much for your time, Michael. 2, for all of you listening, thank you as well. When I look at what really matters, it's taking awareness to action. And so with that, after you've listened to all this, you should be made more aware on this issue. You should no longer be ignorant. And so with that information, please choose to act, because if you don't act, you'll be negligent. And when we look at the support for our veterans, no one wants to be negligent. Even if I wasn't a veteran, I would still be fighting for this because it's the right thing to do, because our veteran community deserves the benefits that they've already been entitled to. So with that said, please act, go from awareness to action, and let's all work together to fix this for our veterans. Thanks again, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Christian. I want to end it on just a note for our listeners. Christian and I and a couple other folks, we were talking to a congressional staffer a few months ago in North Carolina. The staffer was in DC, but it was a North Carolina office. And this staffer, we told them what was happening. And this individual said, wow, I can't believe this. Am I understanding this correctly? That right now you're currently working on your master's, but from what I can tell, you've just got a PhD in VA bureaucracy. And, we were kind of joking and laughing at the time, but that's pretty accurate. When we try to get answers out of the VA, like, hey, what's the holdup? Why aren't you paying these veterans, their earned benefits? You don't get an answer, or you get the runaround, or you get redirected, or you get cut off, or you get a bounce back email. You get everything except the answer. So, okay, we'll end our conversation on that point and just say thank you so much to Christian and everybody else who's in this fight working with us. We need it to be resolved. There are more issues besides this, but for right now, this is our top legislative priority. Let's get it done, folks.
Thank you, Michael and Christian. That was very enlightening. And I'm sure that many people listening to this podcast had no idea that this was a problem. But you've made it very clear to everyone, and I thank you both.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. And I'll just, in our wrap up here, I just want to emphasize that you don't have to be an American abroad to contact your senators to urge them to pass HR 7375. You could be any American, regardless of where you are. We need as much support as possible. Let's get those phone lines burning. Let's get the emails, start hitting up these senators. We want to bombard their inbox and say, hey, this issue really matters to us. This is important. I may not be a veteran, but, somebody in my family is, or I know somebody who is that's living abroad, or, hey, this just isn't right. These are earned benefits that are being denied simply because the VA has an ancient electronic system that they refuse to update. This is just ridiculous. We need to do something about that. So if we can convey that type of messaging, please spread it through your network of your friends and your family, both within and outside the US. And let's get this show on the road. We need the Senate to act. The House has already done its job. And hopefully we'll be back with another podcast soon to talk about some other important issues to the veterans community, such as the foreign medical program or VA's healthcare facility in Manila, the Philippines, a very unique situation. But hopefully first, we have an update for you with positive news that the Senate has taken action. We'll find out. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Sound